Even though the processes of reductive EQ or spectral balancing or some dynamics are not always exclusive and always done in a certain order, we will, however, try to organize these in an order that would seem beneficial for a beginner to start with. And of course, you can always go back and forth within your chain to adjust things. So look at that mastering chain we're going to develop as one thing, as like a one processing unit, meaning that if we move something, in the ending of it, we might want to adjust something in the beginning of that chain and vice versa. So look at it as a liquid thing that's always moving and adjusting elements one to another. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to apply an EQ, and I'm going to apply a reductive EQ first. I will be using the Kirchhoff EQ. You could use any EQ that has ample capabilities like a Pro Q3, anything like that. So what I want to do right here is I want to use an EQ that has ample capabilities of affecting only the mid or the sides. That is the only thing I want to do right now. Now, first of all, the basic setting, if I check right here, is the minimum phase. Okay, so we don't want to use the linear phase right now. Some of the things that I might do here might actually sound worse when using a linear phase EQ. And I'll tell you why. If we were to use anything really narrow like this, so any really narrow peaks that we're removing, like removing some resonance at some point in the song, when using a linear EQ, this would produce quite a bit of ringing. Now that ringing might not be that noticeable in a whole song, but it could be once we get down to maybe having only the low frequencies and doing this, it would create a ring right here, like a sine wave ringing at that point, which you actually could hear when only the low frequencies are present. Now, aside of going into an example and showing you how that would go wrong, just take my word for it. If you want to do any kind of really narrow adjustments, just like this, avoid using linear EQ. So let me delete that point. And as I said, the first thing I want to do, reductive EQ, I want to do some reductions. So first of all, I want to do a high pass. I want to remove all the frequencies below a certain point. Let's see what that point is. I'm going to play a part of the song that has a lot of happening, a lot of everything happening at the same time. Let's say somewhere around here, like at the ending. So let's try this. Let me adjust the BPM as well to the BPM of the song. I think that's going to be nice. I think that was, 126, something like that. Yeah. So let's try it like this. From what I can see, I have no frequencies here below, let's say 30 hertz. So my bass never goes down that much. If you can hear that, we have nothing happening below. And it's a beautiful track by 11. So you see, I have no bass happening below that point. Yeah, beautiful. That's what I want to do. So I want to remove all the rumble that might happen below, let's say 30 hertz. Let's make it exactly 30, just like so. 30. Okay, beautiful. That's great. So I want to remove, let's say, the mid up to there. And then I want to copy this in place, or I can just create a new point, make that point also a high pass. But I want this point to affect the sides, okay? So we want to affect the side part of the signal. This is affecting everything that's mono. So everything that's effectively identical on the left and right channels. Everything in the signal that has the same phase on the left and right channels. And now we're also going to be affecting the side part of the signal, which I can actually play you. So this part of the signal, let me just loop this so we don't lose that. So we're affecting this part of the signal by cutting out everything that's low frequencies there. course, to begin with, we have no lower frequencies in those. The production is quite good. I just want to make sure that if anything ever goes, let's say, below 110, 135, 140, let's say 150, just like this, 150, anything below 150 should not be stereo, okay? That's all I want to make sure. Yeah, so let's go back with the width to 100 so we can hear the mono, and this is the mono part only. That's what we're cutting at 30 hertz. Let's go back to the full mix. Beautiful. Now, on the whole track, what else do I want to do? I'm not going to do any balancing, but I do want to remove some resonances here. And let me make sure that this is affecting the mid and the side. So right here, I hear something from the hi-hat and the ride, and basically, it's not like it's not supposed to be there. Hi-hats are ringy. That's their job, and the ride should be ringy. That's its job. But I want to reduce that just a tiny bit, just like that. Okay, that's good. So let's see if there's anything else I want to remove. Like, I do still feel like it is ringy at that point, and I did find another resonance close to it, like right here. Yeah, right there. So let's try without these two. Oh yeah. So this is quite a subtle change, but we are talking about the mastering process here. So by removing these two just slightly, and 1.5 dB, some would say it's not even that slightly, but by removing only these two frequencies slightly, it's just making it more pleasant to hear. And that's all I want. I just want to make this song more pleasant for listening. And not everything is about it being pleasant, but with these two out of the way, I feel like my ears are going to hurt way less when I start limiting this. And of course, we are going to come back to this process. Now, let me go back to the beginning. So we are removing all the low frequencies below 30 hertz. Why? Anything below that, all the low frequency information below that, could be inducing quite a lot of amplitude and getting in the way of us having ample headroom to master. So usually low frequencies carry a lot more energy. You can see that every time the kick and the bass stop on the breaks, the amplitude is quite lower. You can see that every time kick and bass stop right here in the breaks, there is a reduction in amplitude, reduction in energy. By that extent, you can think that anything below a point of the lowest bass note and the kick drum, yeah, those are the ones that are going to have that low energy. Everything below that, we don't actually need. So even if there is some information below that, we do not want it. Usually it will have a high level of amplitude, and it might just reduce the headroom that we need for mastering. So what did I do right after that? I removed all the low frequency information from the sides, okay? So from everything that is stereo. Why? Well, we do not want, for playback reasons, too much information in the stereo part, but at lower frequencies. So lower frequencies being stereo are going to be real easy to cancel out on a big sound system. Doesn't mean that it's always bad, doesn't mean that we should always remove it, but for electronic music like this, especially 4 on the floor, I do tend to remove it unless there is like a special part in the song where we really want that bass to be stereo. And even then, I don't see why we would want that. Okay, so if we had a bass that was out of phase on the left and right speaker, if you stood right in the center of that, I don't know, a venue where you were listening to that artist, you would hear no bass. Basically, everything right in between the left and the right would be no bass. If at that venue or club, they were to take the signal and take the left and right channels add them together to mono them out and play only the low frequencies, again, you would get no bass. Usually they would just take the left and the right, assuming that they are identical in those low frequencies, which usually is, thanks to production, mastering, whatever. So we are trying to make sure that we have no low frequency information in stereo below a certain frequency, in our case, below 150 hertz, because to reproduce a signal like that physically would most probably cause issues. So we are trying to avoid that. What we did next is we tried to remove some of the resonance we heard. Removing those resonances just makes it easier and more pleasant to listen to the music. Of course, we will come back to the reductive EQ process. But these are one of the main things I would almost always do. So trying to remove anything that's really stingy to my ears, trying to take care of the technical side of the signal as well right at the very beginning, because everything after this is still going to some kind of processing. So if I fed any kind of processing after that with any low frequency rumble that we don't need, or any stereo information, from the low frequencies that we don't need, that would be a no-go. So I want to take care of everything that needs to be removed from the signal before any kind of other processing first. That's the idea behind doing the reductive EQ first and foremost. Let's play the song again and see if there's anything else we want to remove. Of course, not always in the same section. We could hear some other sections of the song, let's say the intro. Sounds good. It's a melody. Okay, that's fine. I feel like we also need to balance this out so that we could continue with all of the reductive EQ stuff that we also need to do. So I feel like right now, for the benefit of doing any more reductive EQ, I do have to take care of the balance too. So I feel like we need to do the spectral balancing before we can continue with any kind of reductive EQ, because for the benefit of us actually hearing well what needs to be there, what doesn't, I do need to balance. As I said, the mastering process is like having one big processor doing all of these things. So we always do come back and forth in between the processors, adjusting them, because the processing of one of them is going to show us maybe some things that the other one needs to do or adjust for.